welcome back to RCC Let's Talk. I'm Kaitlyn, one of the school guidance counsellors, and today I'm joined by Malcolm.
Yeah, good morning everyone. Malcolm here. I am a teacher here at the college and a parent who's had two students go through prep all the way through to grade 12. And I'm always here in the background recording these podcasts, but today I might just chime in and give a bit of information as well.
Perfect, thank you. Today we're talking about navigating NAPLAN, assessment pressure and school stress. For many families, assessment periods bring tension into the home, late nights, rising stress, emotional reactions and sometimes conflict. Today I want to talk about how we can navigate this stress, general day-to-day school stress and assessment pressure, and most importantly, how you can support in a way that builds resilience rather than fear. But let's be real, stress around assessments isn't just about the test. It's often about self-identity, peer comparison, expectations, and fear of falling behind. So let's start by reframing something important. For adults, NAPLAN or assessments or exams might feel like just a test, another school requirement, or a snapshot of literacy. But for others or our teenagers, it can feel like a judgment on intelligence, like what if I'm not smart enough? A comparison with our peers, like what if I do worse than my friends? A label that sticks or proof that they're not good enough or not trying hard enough. But from a teacher's perspective, I might have a turnover to Malcolm if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we take a snapshot of NAPLAN and use that data essentially to give us a little bit of a guidance, an insight into the students that we have in our class. So one of the first things we'll often do at the beginning of every school year when we take on a new class is look at data on the students, and NAPLAN is just one form of data that we have access to. And that helps us, helps guide us in our planning in terms of making adjustments for student needs, both students who are excelling and students who may struggle in different areas.
Yeah, perfect. So just adding that extra level of support for kids at both ends and in the middle.
Absolutely. And it's very important that it is at both ends, because our kids who are excelling like to be pushed, and those kids who are struggling a little bit need that extra help.
Perfect. So even if we told them it doesn't define them, part of their brain is still scanning for threat. And here's why. As we discussed a little bit last week, adolescence is a stage where identity is forming. Teenagers are highly sensitive to social comparison, and their brains are wired to notice where they fit and how they measure up. Teenagers are constantly asking themselves or assessing their social situations in regards to who they are, where they fit, how capable they feel, and where do they measure up. So when assessment results are discussed publicly, benchmarked, or compared, even subtly, it can activate some level of anxiety. And while anxiety isn't a sign of weakness, it's just their nervous system trying to protect them from a perceived threat.
Yeah, I think, Kaitlyn, it's good there for the kids to recognise that, they talk about the data being public, and school data definitely is public to some degree, but their individual data is very private. And as teachers, yes, we have access to their private data and their results individually, but we're bound to keep that information. It's certainly not shared, and the information's used for the right purpose to help those kids out, but it's not completely public.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes I think kids also discuss it between themselves too.
Yeah, and they should make that decision as to whether they want to.
Yeah.
Even when kids get their results back for a class assessment, it's completely up to them whether they choose to share those results with other students, and they certainly do not have to.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's good for them too, to have that choice and that power.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what can school stress look like? Sometimes it's not always quite obvious. It doesn't always look like panic, attacks or crying or tears. It can look like procrastination, avoidance, irritability, perfectionism, or an I don't care attitude. Often what parents might see this as is laziness, but it can actually look or be quite overwhelming. So we can often see what needs to be done and we don't quite understand why they just won't start. But quite often not starting is just the nervous system that feels a bit overwhelmed. So when our brain feels overloaded, it can shift into fight, which looks like anger, frustration, defensiveness, or flight, which is that avoidance or distraction, which can be like that doom scrolling. or freeze, which is just shutting down or not engaging in anything. So if we have a look and understand this, it can change how we respond as parents or as adults in teenagers' lives. So instead of asking or accusing of not trying or pushing them to just start, we might ask, is this feeling a little bit bigger than you expected? Or do you want to break this task down together? And this is something that parents can do, or teachers as well in the classroom. I've seen quite a few teachers help students break down their assessment tasks together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of the most basic adjustments we can make for students is to break a task down into smaller, more manageable chunks. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that can start with just an email too, like if a student wants to email a teacher or arrange a time to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. Email in modern days is very good communication, and our students are very good at using it as well. But yeah, sometimes, when we break things down into smaller chunks, it might just be enough to get started. And often that's all the kids need to do is make a start, and then everything flows from there really nicely. But that first step can be the biggest step. Perfect.
Definitely those small stepping stones help. Even outside of school, I guess for adults as well, that's important for tasks we have to do. So for the role as a parent during assessment period, I've come up with am going to discuss 4 key ways that adults can reduce harmful stress while supporting high standards. And some of these might sound similar to suggestions from last week, but they all kind of flow in together. And I guess having similar suggestions makes it a little bit easier for you to build on as a parent or an adult in a teenager's life. So separating worth from performance. Teenagers often can internalize results as an identity. So instead of like, I just got a low mark, it can become, I'm not smart enough or I'm not capable. So one of the most protective messages that you can send is your effort and who you are matter more than just this result. Be careful of unintentionally linking love or approval to achievement, or even lack their worth to their level of achievement. We want to change our comments to be more validating of their effort and how capable they are. So it can look like, we are proud of the effort that you put in, or we are proud of how consistent you're being with your studies. So this can help alleviate some of that anxiety.
Yeah, I like that, Kaitlyn, because that takes the movement from, I like that you got an A, and then all of a sudden the importance is the A to I like the effort you put in, and that's rewarding the effort, and then the student's more likely to put in the effort. And eventually effort equals results.
Absolutely. So we also want to focus on the process. So like Malcolm said, that effort and not just the outcome. So instead of asking like, did you get an A, or what did you get? What did your peers get? We can try, how did you feel about your preparation? What worked well for you this time? And what would you adjust next time? As this builds reflective and solution-focused thinking. We don't want to eliminate all levels of stress, as some small amounts of stress help motivate. However, we want the level of stress to be that of where the student can identify steps to move forward. It also teaches teenagers that assessments are great opportunities for feedback. Alternatively, or a 2.5 if you will, if they are upset about their performance, we can look to validate how they are feeling, because when emotions are high, their thinking brain isn't quite fully online. So we could start by saying, that must have been really stressful for you, or I can see that you're frustrated. Let's try regulating our nervous system first. Which moves me to point 3, which is help regulate before you help solve. So when a teenager is highly emotional after an exam or an assessment, their thinking brain, again, is offline. So in that moment, problem solving won't work. So how do we help regulate? We can use a calm tone, a slower pace, and just simple empathy. So that sounds really disappointing. I'm sorry that you feel that way. Once the emotion settles, then you can shift to, what are the next steps? What support would you like? Regulation first, strategy second. We can also help create structure without micromanaging. So teenagers benefit from predictable routines during assessment periods. So this can look like a visible study plan, regular breaks, it might be snack breaks or just regular check-ins, consistent sleep times, and some technology boundaries. But we want to avoid the constant checking in, such as have you started, how much have you done today, what's next. This can increase the level of anxiety. So instead we want to try collaborative planning, which can look like what's your plan for tonight and do you want help breaking this into chunks? Autonomy builds confidence. So we've done some strategies for what parents can do, but what can students do to help reduce their assessment anxiety? So there's 4 brief strategies that I've come up with that might help for you to either introduce at home or at school. So number 1 is the study block rule, which is a designated time of focused work, so 35 or 40 minutes, followed by a 10-minute break. And then you repeat this again, and then after that second repeat, you take a bit of a longer break. This is because the brain learns better in structured intervals. Our brains are not designed for sustained, intense focus for hours at a time. And after about 30 to 50 minutes of deep concentration, cognitive efficiency starts to drop. So you might notice that you're rereading the same sentence, you're zoning out, making simple mistakes, or you just keep checking your phone without meaning to. This is a sign of mental fatigue. So short breaks allow the brain to reset, restore attentional resources, and consolidate the information we just learned. Number 2 is we want to externalize the stress. So if you say, I'm going to fail, I can't cope, instead of making it sound like you're the problem, let's separate ourselves from the problem and externalize that. So you might say, instead say, it sounds like your stress is telling you that, and this separates you from the anxious thought or the stressful thought. Externalizing this stress simply means that you're not the problem. The stress is something that is happening to you, and this gives you a level of control over the problem or over the stress as well. So you can ask, what evidence do you have to say that you can't cope or that you can't fail, and then change that to what's in your control right now and what's the next step. This helps reduce shame and immediately it lowers that emotional intensity, because shame is one of the biggest drivers of shutdown and avoidance. So we kind of want to avoid the avoidance and avoid shutting down. Which leads me to number 3, which is our 3-column reset. So on paper, you'll draw 3 columns. In your first column, you'll write what you're worried about. In your second column, you'll write what you can control. And in the third column, you'll write one small next step that you can take. This turns overwhelm into action. Again, externalizing that stress is helpful because it creates that psychological distance, and that distance reduces that shame, lowers emotional intensity, and increases control and improves your problem-solving ability. And then the next one is protecting your sleep at all costs, because sleep deprivation dramatically increases our anxiety and reduces our performance quite significantly. So those late night cramming sessions, while they might feel helpful, are rarely ever helpful. So we want to encourage screens off about 60 minutes before bed, and that can look like reading a book instead or doing your nighttime routine. Having a consistent wind-down routine also helps promote better sleep, longer sleep, and better quality sleep. And then we also want to have a look at having no major studying past a certain time, because that just doesn't help our brain, and the information won't stick as much as those structured study sessions we spoke about in that first step. So rested brains perform better than exhausted ones.
Yeah, can I just add again a little teacher's perspective there? When it comes to assessment, particularly written assignments, students often have a lot of in-class time working on those assignments. And one of the biggest stresses we find in the students is that whole, I left it to the last minute. Yeah. And then we've got the cram happening at home that's causing the late nights and the poor sleep. And so I would encourage students when you're at school, use the time that's made to you, given to you.
Absolutely.
Those who perform really well often use their class time to their benefit and work well during class, and then have very little to tidy up at home.
Yeah.
And then the stress doesn't build up with this idea of last minute.
Absolutely. And we have our long sessions at our school too. So that first strategy that I spoke around time blocking study, you can do that in a lesson, like pick maybe 25 or 20 minutes to have that 10 minutes in between. So you've still got 40 minutes of quality lesson time with the teacher there to support that as well. So you can break that down in class and use these strategies in class as well as at
Absolutely.
home.
And then your teacher's available to you to talk to too when you are running into a little bit of trouble or need a question answered. They're right there for you.
Absolutely. And a lot of our teachers as well won't be on emails when you're doing a late night cram session or a late night assessment the day before it's due. So if you want that support as well, like getting in early with the teachers as well, you'll get a lot more support and a lot timelier support as well.
Yeah, correct. Us teachers, we like our sleep too.
Yeah, absolutely. So next we'll look at when stress becomes something more and we might need to seek some extra support. So it might be persistent avoidance of school. So more often than not, you don't want to come to school, or you're feeling sick, or you're noticing that your teenager's feeling sick and doesn't want to come to school. Those panic symptoms before a test. So feeling super worried, having those negative thoughts of that you're going to fail or that you can't cope with this, and that's happening before every test. Ongoing sleep disruption, so if you're having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or feeling rested when you wake up, and significant drop in mood too.
Yeah, and the last thing we want to see as teachers is students taking time off school to complete assignments. And that, is obviously a result of cramming and last minute things. But once a student takes a day off to finish assignments, they're then missing in class, things that are happening for that day that then have to be caught up on. And we end up in a snowballing effect of more and more pressure getting onto the students and more anxiety around that. So, other strategies that come in early to get those assignments done as opposed to taking a day off school to finish work.
Absolutely. And we don't want that to snowball, like you said, into this big overwhelming situation. Like there's definitely steps we can take early on to help reduce that happening. So if you are finding as a student or as a parent that your student would like to access some external support or some extra support, we do have 4 guidance counsellors here at Ryan, as well as a number of wonderful wellbeing staff who can help. So touching base with your pastoral leader or your pastoral care teacher will always be the first point of call, and they'll be able to direct you in the right direction for that level of support. So seeking that help models strength as well, like getting extra tips or extra strategies to help is a good thing. Like it's only going to help you in the long run. So our final takeaways. So if we remember 3 things from today, it's that assessment stress is often more about how a teenager views themselves and not just the academic result. Emotional safety at home help reduces assessment anxiety or test anxiety. And confidence grows when teenagers learn they can cope, not when everything goes perfectly. Your steady presence during assessment periods matters more than the mark on the page or the grade that they get. So parenting through assessment blocks can feel intense, but these seasons are opportunities not just for academic growth, but for teaching emotional regulation, perspective, and resilience. Thank you for listening and for the support you provide every day.
Thanks, everyone.